And once you have all 70 of your granny squares worked up, you're ready to start seaming them together to piece together your panels. And then your panels are what you're going to seam together to make your jacket. To start, you are going to want to make 2 separate panels that each have this granny stripe stitching on the side of them. Each of these 2 panels are going to be made up of 10 granny squares, all seamed together into 2 strips of 5. So I went ahead and I worked up the first one here just to make sure I had a good grasp on what I was doing. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I made this panel here. So go ahead and start with 10 of your granny squares. I do recommend kind of laying them out like this because it gives you a good idea on you know, which ones are going to be next to each other, and make sure that you like them all kind of clustered together. Go ahead and you're going to flip all of them so that the right sides are all facing each other. And the first thing that we're going to do is seam all 10 of these together into two rows of 5. So go ahead and grab your the same color that you chose to border your granny squares. And I'm going to just kind of set these out of our way here. Now to seam this up, you are going to start with a slip knot on your hook in the same color that you chose to border your granny squares. Go ahead and take 2 of your granny squares, and into the chain 2 space here in the corner, you're just going to insert your hook and then pull up a loop of your working yarn. So you are right there and you're ready to immediately you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then into the space in between your granny clusters of your border, you're going to slip stitch, but you're going to make sure you go under both of your granny squares. So go ahead and going through both my granny squares here, I'm going to slip stitch and then chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and that chain 3 is going to again get you past your granny cluster, and then you are just going to slip stitch in that space in between your clusters. Chain 3 to get past the cluster, slip stitch to join. And then you're just going to do that all the way across until you've made your way to your next chain 2 space. That is going to be the corner of your granny square. And here I am coming up to the corner. Coming up here to my second corner, and I am in both of my granny squares. I'm going to slip stitch there. I'm going to stop for just a second, remove the cat, and then pick up my next 2 granny squares. So again, check and make sure they look nice with each other. My second set of granny squares here, I am just going to slip stitch into the very first chain 2 space here at the corner. Again, making sure I'm going under both of my granny squares. I'm just going to slip stitch them together. So there's no chaining in between one set of squares to the next. You just immediately, you'll slip into the first, or you'll slip into the last corner of your first square, and then slip into the first corner of your second square immediately. So once you've gone ahead and you slip stitched into there, you're going to again just start that chaining 3 and then slip stitching, making sure you're going under both squares to seam it up. And you will just continue in that exact same way until you have all 10 of your stitches, or I'm sorry, all 10 of your granny squares seamed up here in the middle. I just want to show you that corner one more time. I'm going to show you at a different angle. Okay, so I'm just going to show you exactly what I just showed you, but at a closer angle so that you're able to see exactly what stitching I'm doing. So again, I've got a stack of 10 granny squares here, and I'm just going to show you the chaining and slip stitching that I've been doing to seam everything up. So go ahead and again, you're going to start with a slip knot on your hook. And with two of your granny squares, you're going to go ahead and make sure that the wrong sides are together, or I'm sorry, the right sides are together, and you can know which one is the right side because it has a nice pretty braided edge. So put those nice finished edges together, and then you are going to, with a slip knot on your hook and your bordering color, you are going to slip, go into the chain 2 space here at the corner of your 2 squares and slip stitch them together. So we have slip stitched there, and we are going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And we are going to skip this first section of granny stitching, and in this space between our granny clusters, we are going to slip stitch together our squares together. So making sure that I've got both of the granny squares together there, slip stitch, and then again chain 3 to get past this 3 double crochet cluster, and then in the space between your clusters, making sure you've got both your squares on your hook, go ahead and slip stitch to join them. Chain 3, skip 3, slip stitch in the space in between your clusters. So it's super easy. It goes really, really fast. So really, once you've got your granny squares completed, your jacket does not take much time at all to assemble it and get it together. So just work your way all the way down here until you're at your next corner. So here I am at my corner space, and I'm ready to grab 2 more granny squares, making sure that the right sides are together and that I like the 4 of them together, which I kind of don't. That's a little close for this same section to be together, so I'm gonna do that one instead. Again, making sure the right sides are together. Slip stitch in that chain 2 space for the corner. There shouldn't be any chaining between this square and this square. You're just going to immediately slip stitch, making sure you have both of your granny squares there. Slip stitch them together. And I'm going to make sure that's nice and tight and clean. All of my slip stitches I've made nice and with a tight tension. And I'm chaining 3 and slip stitching. Chain 3. Sorry, I'm all wobbly. And slip stitch. Chain 3, slip stitch, and you will just do that for all, in this case it'd be 5 of your granny squares. It just depends on which panel you are working. You want to make sure that you are lining up your granny stitching correctly. See how I almost skipped this one here and slip stitched here? It's like buttoning your buttons wrong. It won't work out right in the end. So you want to make sure you've got your granny stitching lined up appropriately. So for this right now, what I'm working on is the sleeve. So I will actually only be attaching 3. But I wanted to get you another angle at this chaining and slip stitching so that you're able to see really well. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next section. The next thing I want to show you is the granny striping up here at on the side of your panels. You'll notice that the color changes at the end of each block and goes to a different color. So you can choose to just carry the granny striping all the way up the side, but I wanted to stick as close to the original design as possible, so I went ahead and figured out a way to do that change there, and I wanted to show you how I do that. So this here is a piece that I had made, and it actually is the second panel, the second half of my back panel. And what I need to do is I need to add some granny striping to this side. It's actually going to match and be exactly the same as this one. So go ahead and take your any of your colors that you have, because you want it to be pretty random. I'm going to start with a slip knot on your hook, just like usual. So my slip knot is ready, and now I'm going to get my hook ready. What I'm going to do is I am going to, in this chain space here at this corner, actually, first of all, because of this panel that I'm working, I actually need to start down here and on the back. But it just depends on what panel you're working. The pattern is going to specify exactly where to attach your yarn for each panel, so don't worry about that. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and start with my granny squares facing away from me. I've got my slip knot here on my hook. All right, and so I'm ready to go ahead and start. I'm going to pull up my loop. I like to chain one with my tail just to secure it. That chain one with my tail doesn't count for anything. I just do it to be safe. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain two, and into that same chain space that I just started that chain two, I'm going to put a half double crochet. So our granny striping is made up of half double crochets, 3 half double crochets into the same space, and they're worked in this space in between your clusters of your border. So into this space here in between my 2 clusters, I'm going to place 3 half double crochets. So it's really similar to round 5 of our granny square, that half double crochet stitch, and 3 of them in between each. Slack here. Ow, please don't get my yarn. So 3 half double crochets in every space all the way around. Excuse me, sir. Really? Monster. So in this last space here, you're going to go ahead and you're just going to put 2 stitches into this last chain 2 space here at the corner of your first square. And you're actually going to finish the second chain, or the second half double crochet, with the new color. So go ahead and stop at that point. I like to cut my yarn just because it's easier to deal with when it's not attached to the ball. I'm going to go ahead and keep this as nice and neat as I can. And then I'm going to pull up my next color with a slip knot to finish my second stitch there in that chain 2 space. And it's a good idea to go ahead and I like to just tie a little double knot, just like I was in between my color changing when I was making my granny squares. Just tie a little knot, and then I'm going to hold this kind of out of the way and to the side here, and then I'm going to work over those tails so I don't have to worry about sewing them in later. Again, saving me as much time as possible. So in this one here, I put 2 half double crochets, and then in this very first one of the next square, I'm going to place 2 half double crochets with my new color, with no chaining in between. And I'm going to control, again, the tension here, and I'm going to try to smoosh it together as close as I can. So there's like no gapping or spacing. I want this to almost look like it's one granny cluster that's split into 2 colors. Okay. It doesn't look awesome right now. It does look better when you get the next row going. So we'll revisit this and see how much better that looks in the next row. Again, you're just going to go right back to putting a half double crochet granny cluster in each of these spaces. So we'll go ahead and do that together, and I'll show you that. I'll show you how to join the next square again. So there's. And here I am at that chain 2 space in the corner again. So I know I'm going to put 2 half double crochets into this space, 1, and I'm actually going to finish the second one with my new color. So reach, make everything lay nice and flat. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this for my next color. So pull up this new color to finish my next stitch. I'm going to go ahead and, ooh, almost cut myself. And just tie a little knot here. Just to make it nice and secure. And then again, just directly into half double crochets into that next square, into the next corner space of your next square. 2 into the first one, and 3 into all the other ones until you get to your corner again, and then you'll just repeat attaching that new color and working along until the corner again. Here I am coming up on the next corner again. I'm going to put 1 full half double there. Then I am going to and for this granny square, so when you are doing the striping along the back panel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have worked your way up 3 squares, you are actually going to stop halfway through the 4th square, and then this section here you're going to attach your sleeve. So actually what you'll do is you'll granny stripe for 3.5 blocks up the back. So go ahead and start your second granny crochet stitch, or your half double crochet stitch, and pull up your new color. Cut that orange yarn out of there. Tie a nice little double knot here. Okay. And if you notice, I am kind of taking the time to lay all my stuff out. So I'm like taking my tails and I'm getting them out of the way, and I've got my working yarn up here. It's no sense in fighting your way through it. Just take your time and work your way through it, and you'll get through it. So go ahead, yarn over into that corner space here of the next square, half double crochet, half double, so 2 in the first, and then 3 in the second. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there's 2 blocks. I'm going to do 4 blocks all together, or 4 granny square clusters all together. And then we are going to be done with our first row of granny striping. So here in this last section of our granny square that we're going to work, we're actually only going to put 2 half double crochets here. So half of a block, half of a cluster. And so you're actually going to finish that second cluster with your new color. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that out of my way. Pull up my next color. And I'm going to actually turn my work. And if you see, you can actually still see the carrying of my yarn that I've been doing, and I'm going to show you how to cover that up. So I've pulled up my new color. I've got my tail here of my old color and my new color, and I'm just going to tie them together. That stuff is not like super necessary, but I like to make sure it's secure. Go ahead, chain 2. That counts as a stitch. And you are going to work in the space in between your chain 2, or in between your 2 half double crochets and your total 3 half double crochets here. You're going to work in this space in between your clusters. Yarn over, and you're just going to place 3 half double crochets in that first space in between your clusters. Okay, and if you notice that orange yarn that's carried through from this section, you can still see it there. I'm just going to cover it up. So I'm just going to make sure I include it when I go through my stitch. And that's going to just help to cover it up and hide it and secure it too, so that I don't have to worry about sewing it in the end. There you go. So you're going to actually have 3 total half double crochet in this 3 total half double crochet clusters in this very first section here. It'll be half as much for the rest. Okay, and you're actually going to finish your last stitch with your new color. So here's my 3rd and final, and I'm actually going to snip that yarn and pull up my next color. tails together. And if you see, this is the one that we split. We're just gonna skip over it entirely, and we're gonna work into this first space here between our two clusters. Make sure I'm working over all my tails that I can. Again, just placing 3 half double crochets into each space, working over as many tails as you can. Okay, so I went ahead and finished up this striping here until I'm at my last block for my second row of this striping. Again, working the half double crochet stitch, 3 of them in between each of your previous row's clusters. Here I am. I'm going to work a full cluster here, 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm just going to put 1 double crochet into the top of my turning chain here. Or 1 half double crochet into the top of the turning chain. That half double crochet should be finished with your next color. So I'm going to use this as my next color. Get my slip knot ready there. And I'm going to just finish this stitch with my new color. I love that teal and that red together. Oh, do you have my scissors? Thank you. Quickly tie a little knot here. 1 little double knot. There you go. All right, and you're ready to turn your work. So I turn my work. I'm ready to go ahead and chain 2, and that counts as my first double crochet. And into the same stitch as my join, I'm gonna do, it counts as my first half double crochet, and into the same stitch as my join, I'm gonna do another half double crochet. And then I'm going to place 3 half double crochets in every space until I get to the end where my colors change. All right, and so here I am, I'm on my 3rd row of striping, and for the 3rd row of striping, you are going to have here where your 2 blocks join, a granny cluster that is a little different than all the granny clusters. You are going to actually put 2 half double crochets change color and put 2 more half double crochets right here all in the same spot. So I'm going to show you really quick what that looks like, and then let's go ahead and put 2 of our half double crochets using this teal color that we have been using for up until this point. And so I'm going to stop before I finish my last my second half double crochet here, and I'm gonna put this over here so I know not to use it again, and I'm gonna pull up the next color. I'm gonna use this pink color, and I've got my slip knot ready, so I'm gonna pull up this pink color here. There's that pink color. I've already snipped my tail, so I just want to tie a little knot here, make it nice and strong. Okay, and I'm ready to do 2 more half double crochets, and I'm just going to work right over my tails. So this one here actually has 4. I just thought it looked better having a nice even slit down the middle. So this one here has 4. If you let that ruin your cereal, then you've got some real problems, but anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and put 3 half double crochets into each space between your clusters until you get to the end, and at the end you'll do the same little split here at the intersection of all your colors, and don't forget you're only going to work half of a block up here. So you're going to want to go ahead and put 5 rows of your granny striping on the edge of the panels that it calls for in the pattern. So I went ahead and I've worked my way up to this half square here, so I went ahead and you can see where I have this half cluster and this half cluster because of my color changes, and I'm ready to complete my last half cluster of this row. There's that, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a 3 half double crochet cluster into this space. I'm going to put 3 half double cluster into this space. Oops, went off camera, sorry guys. So there's that, and then here I am at this space here, and I want to go ahead and I want to start at this or end at the same as my start. So I have 2 half doubles into the very first. I'm going to put 2 half doubles into the very last. Now this second half double should be finished with my new color. Finished with my new color. I'm going to tie a little knot here. Chain 2. Turn my work. Okay. Now this chain 2 is going to count as a double crochet, and right here into this space I'm going to put a cluster. And so this row is going to actually be a repeat of row 2 for the granny square striping section of the pattern. So you should be able to just go ahead and repeat, alternate those rows that we just learned for the next, until you have a total of 5 rows of striping in between your granny squares here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish.
So we're going to go ahead and we are going to work on the seaming of the horizontal seams here. After you have gone ahead and you've pieced together your squares and you've done some of the striping on the side, you're going to have these sections here where your granny squares are still not joined. What I want you to go ahead and do is fold it so that fold the whole panel so that the right sides are together and the wrong sides are facing you. And with a slip knot on your hook with your bordering color, anytime you're seaming, you're going to be using that bordering color. You're just going to go into that very corner section there, that chain 2 space at the corner, and slip stitch. Use the tail to secure it. Okay, and you are going to just, oh, popped off there. Let's try that again. Slip stitch, and you have attached your bordering color, and you're ready to just go ahead and you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then in that space between your granny stitching, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch. So exactly the same as before, you're just working in a different direction. You're going to be working from the outside of the panel to the inside of the panel where you have worked your granny striping, your granny stitch striping. Again, we are just chaining 3, skipping 3, and slip stitching in the space in between our granny clusters. Making sure I'm going under both of my squares there. I'm just chaining 3, and then I'll slip stitch to join. I want to make sure you know exactly what to do when you get to the corner. So here I am at the corner. I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to slip stitch. I'm just going to kind of root around in there, and I'm going to try to find that chain 2 space right there. I'm going to slip stitch right here. I'm not going to chain or anything after I slip stitch. I'm just going to go in, making sure I'm under both of my squares, and I'm slip stitch, and then I'm not going to chain. I'm just going to immediately find that next chain 2 space in my next square, and I'm just going to slip stitch right there, and I'm going to kind of use my tension and tighten that up and make it nice and secure and neat, and then right back to chaining 3 and slip stitching in this space in between your clusters to join. And so you will just continue just like this all the way down until you've reached the end of your panel, where you will chain 1, cut your yarn, and fasten off, and go ahead and move on to the next seam. So at this point, you have all of the techniques that are used in the pattern. Again, this is meant to be used as a tool with the pattern. This isn't supposed to be me working through the pattern with you. If at this point you still aren't super comfortable, or you would just like to maybe join a community of some like-minded people, you can go ahead and search for the Lilac and Loops Rebecca Cradi private Facebook group on Facebook, and you can look in your receipt from your purchase of the pattern. You will find a code. If you put that code in where it asks you when you go to join the group, you will be able to have full access to all of the videos and other tools that I provide for all my customers that have purchased this pattern. You'll be able to post questions there and help each other and share stories and share your progress and your finished products. And so I'm really, really excited to invite you guys to that and invite you to be a part of that with me. So again, just search for the Lilac and Loops Rebecca Cradi private Facebook group. I'll try to link it in the description below, but here I am. I've worked my way all the way up to this last little section here. I've chained 3, slip stitch, chain 3, slip stitch here, and again I'm just going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to slip stitch in this last corner space right here. Chain 1, and I cut my yarn, pull my tail all the way through, and I'm ready to weave that in with my darning needle, and you should have something that looks like this. Nice and flat and pretty seaming. This is going to be the outside of the piece that actually shows, and then if you flip it, you can see on the inside there's more of a raised seam there. The striping on the edge looks really nice, and it's nice and pretty. So thank you guys so much. I hope you really enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful, and take care.